The first thing I remember about that night is the rain. It wasn't gentle rain, not the kind that relaxes you or softens the world. It was sharp, relentless, needling the old Harwood estate like it wanted to peel the paint right off the walls. I stood under the porch roof, shaking the water off my coat while the storm hissed behind me, and for a second, just a second, I wished I had never accepted this case. My name is Jonathan Hale. I've spent nearly 2 decades as an estate lawyer. I've read wills written by drunkards, wills scribbled on napkins, wills signed in hospital beds by hands trembling with life's final weakness. I've seen families scream at each other across conference tables. I've seen siblings smile coldly while plotting to ruin one another. And I've seen legacies torn apart like paper because someone couldn't stand what the dead left behind. But what happened in the Harwood estate was different. Much different. Worse. As I stepped inside, the warmth of the chandelier lights washed over me. The house smelled of old wood, polished floors, and memories that didn't want to be touched. My shoes clicked across the marble as the butler led me toward the study where the Harwood family waited. I had never met them before this night, yet somehow, the moment I entered the corridor, I felt their tension seep through the air like smoke. When the doors opened, all four of them turned to look at me. They were seated exactly as Eleanor, the deceased, would have liked. Stiff postures, folded hands, faces that had practiced grief in the mirror. Her portrait loomed above them, her painted eyes following me with an unsettling familiarity. "Mr. Hale," Richard Ames said, rising slightly from his seat. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Richard, Eleanor's second husband, looked like a man carved from cold stone. His face was composed, but his eyes rarely rested on anyone too long. I had always been good at sensing dishonesty. Something about him forced my instincts to brace. "Of course," I answered softly. "Your wife's request seemed urgent." He gave a stiff nod and sat back down. I let my eyes drift to the others. Charles, the eldest son, around 58, tall, shoulders pulled back, like a soldier who refused to slouch even in defeat. He tapped a single finger on the armrest. A man trying to control something he couldn't name. Marion, the daughter, mid-50s, fragile appearance, nervous hands, lips slightly parted as though she wanted to say something, but didn't trust her own voice. Her grief looked real, until you noticed that every few seconds she glanced toward her brothers as if checking how she was expected to behave. And then there was Samuel, the middle child, the quiet one. His posture was collapsed inward, his eyes dim, his shoulders slumped as if the past sat on him like an unwelcome passenger. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He just stared at the carpet like it had something important to tell him. 4 people, 4 different emotional masks. One dead matriarch whose portrait watched the scene like a judge. "Shall we begin?" I asked, reaching for the leather folder containing Eleanor's final testament. No one spoke, but their silence answered for them. I took my seat at the center of the long mahogany table, placed the folder before me, and exhaled slowly. The storm outside flashed against the window, casting the room in momentary white light. For a second, Eleanor's painted face seemed to shift, like she was smirking. I opened the folder. There were 2 documents inside. One was the official typed "Will I expected." The second was handwritten. A thin, yellowed sheet of paper, folded neatly, sealed with a tiny wax stamp. My heart paused for a breath. Something about that paper felt wrong. It felt like it wasn't supposed to be there. Charles noticed my hesitation and spoke sharply. "What is that? That wasn't there before?" I swallowed. "It appears to be an addition, possibly a codicil." But it wasn't. I knew that after one glance. Codicils don't come sealed. Codicils don't come tucked between official pages. Codicils don't have shaky handwriting that looks like someone wrote it in fear. "Read it," Marian whispered. Her voice quivered, like she already feared what it would say. I took a breath, broke the tiny seal, and unfolded the paper. Eleanor's handwriting sprawled across the page. Uneven, emotional, the kind of writing done by a trembling hand in a moment of desperation. I began reading. "To my children, you will receive nothing until one among you uncovers the truth of what happened in the West Wing on the winter night of 1973. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. Marian's hand flew to her mouth. Samuel looked like someone punched the breath out of him. Charles glared at me. Not the paper, not his siblings. Me. Like I had written it. Richard closed his eyes slowly, exhaling through his nose, as though he had expected this. "What nonsense is this?" Charles snapped. "This again? After all these years?" "Charles," Marian whispered, her voice breaking. "She told us she would never bring that up again." I lowered the paper slightly. "There's more." Of course there was. The handwriting dipped harder, darker, like Eleanor's emotions sharpened with every stroke. I read on. "Only the one who discovers the truth shall inherit the estate. The others will receive a single key. It will open the room where the truth was buried." Marian choked on a gasp. Samuel started shaking. Richard sat perfectly still, too still, like his soul had frozen in his body. I continued because my duty required it, though a part of me wanted to fold the paper back up and leave without another word. But lawyers don't get to run. We bear the weight of the dead. We speak for them when they can't. And Eleanor wanted to speak. I finished the handwritten note. "I will rest only when the truth is spoken, not whispered, spoken." I let the paper fall onto the table. The storm outside punctuated the silence with another flash of white. The room looked smaller now, as if the walls had closed in around us. Charles rose abruptly. "This is a trick, an old woman's madness." "It's her handwriting," Marian said quietly. Her voice wavered. "You know it is." "She wasn't well," he snapped. "She was lucid," Richard interrupted smoothly. "Painfully so. Until the end." I remained silent, watching the storm of emotions swirl around me. Samuel finally looked up at me, eyes wet. "Mr. Hale," he whispered, "does the law require us to follow this?" "It depends," I said gently. "If the court recognizes the note as part of the will." "It won't," Charles cut in. "Then yes," I finished, ignoring him. "The instructions would need to be carried out." Richard gave a slow nod, as if confirming something he already suspected. "What truth?" Marian whispered. "We don't even know what she wants us to find." Charles scoffed. "Of course we do." Everyone turned to him. And in that moment, I saw something in his face, something dark and fearful, something that had been waiting decades for this moment to arrive. He swallowed hard. "We know exactly what she means." The next day, I returned to the estate alone. Not for legal reasons, not because anyone requested it, but because I felt something pulling me back. No matter how many wills I've read, how many secrets I've heard whispered across deathbeds, something about Eleanor's words clung to me like a cold hand on my shoulder. I told myself It was professional responsibility, but deep down, I knew the truth. I wanted answers too. The butler hesitated when I asked to see the West Wing. "It is not in use, sir," he said softly. "That's why I need to see it," I replied. He didn't argue. He simply handed me a tarnished brass key. The corridor to the West Wing smelled different from the rest of the mansion. Like dust, old air, forgotten perfume. Each step echoed louder than the last. The wallpaper peeled in places. The temperature seemed to drop. I found the door at the very end of the hall. The key turned with a reluctant click. Inside, the West Wing felt frozen in time. A broken lamp. Shelves emptied long ago. A coat rack with a single tiny child's sweater hanging on it. Light blue, moth-eaten. I walked deeper. The floor creaked as though protesting my presence. My flashlight beam traced along faded wallpaper, cracked picture frames, scraped floors. And then I noticed it. A small wooden clock on the dresser. Its glass face cracked. Its hour hand stuck at 1:13 a.m., the exact time Eleanor wrote in her note. The time the truth was buried. I felt a chill climb my spine. I entered the final room at the end of the corridor. The nursery. The walls were bare, stripped clean. The floorboards stained in uneven patches, as though something had once been spilled and scrubbed over and over again. A lone wooden rocking chair sat in the center. Still. Too still. But something else caught my eye. A corner of wallpaper that didn't quite lie flat. I tugged it gently. Behind it was a small gap where a wooden board had been loosened. And inside that gap was an envelope. Yellowed. Crinkled. Sealed with wax. My heart hammered as I pulled it free. On the front, in shaky handwriting, was a single line. For the one who can love me still. My throat tightened. This was no legal document. This was a confession. A plea. A wound wrapped in paper. With trembling hands, I broke the wax seal. Inside was a letter. And the moment I began reading it, I felt the estate gasp around me. The truth was no longer buried. It was rising. I held the letter carefully, as though it might crumble to dust in my hands. The air in that empty nursery felt thick, like the room itself knew what I was about to uncover. Outside, thunder rolled again, shaking the window glass. It was the only sound in a wing that had forgotten what life felt like. I raised the paper closer to the flashlight's beam and began reading Eleanor's shaking handwriting. To whoever can still love me, please forgive what I was too afraid to say. My breath caught. The ink dipped in uneven strokes, the lines wavering like her hand had fought the weight of memory. On the winter night of 1973, I lost my daughter. For a long moment, I didn't move. A daughter. There was no daughter listed in the official will. No daughter in any of the legal family records. No daughter in the portrait hallway. Nothing. As though she had never even existed. But as the storm rattled the windows, I kept reading. My husband said she was not his child. He was right. A chill raced across my shoulders. Her father was the man my husband called brother, a man I loved before I knew I was betraying the life laid out for me. My pulse hammered in my ears. This was no inheritance twist. This was a confession sealed in guilt. Eleanor wrote of a forbidden love, a child born from that love, a secret that grew heavier with every passing year. She wrote of the fight with her husband that winter night, a violent argument that shook the entire household. He came for the child. He said she would not grow up a reminder of my sin. The ink smudged there, as though her tears had fallen on the page. I chased him into the West Wing, but the door was locked. I heard her cry. One last time. My throat tightened. When the door opened, they were both gone. I lowered the letter, feeling the weight of the words settle like stones in my chest. The West Wing wasn't just closed for renovation. It was closed to bury a crime. I read the final lines. He told the world she died of illness. He told me nothing. I searched every day for 3 years until they forced me to stop. I could almost hear her whispering as the storm outside softened to a cold drizzle. My children grew up believing I was unstable, that I obsessed over a ghost. A long, shaky exhale left me. Eleanor wasn't unstable. She was a mother whose child had been erased. The letter ended with a line that felt like a blade. The keys will open the truth, but only one of them has the heart to face it. It was signed simply, Eleanor. I folded the letter back into the envelope. Though my hands shook so much, I nearly tore the paper. The truth wasn't just buried here. It was entombed. I stepped back into the hallway, feeling the whole wing staring at me through its peeling wallpaper and scuffed floors. Every creak sounded like a whisper. Every shadow felt like memory's ghost. As I reached the end of the corridor, I found someone waiting for me. Samuel. He stood there in the dim light, arms wrapped around himself, eyes red as though he hadn't slept. "You came back," he murmured. "I needed clarity," I said quietly. He stared past me, toward the nursery door, and his jaw trembled. "You found something, didn't you?" I hesitated, but something in his eyes, the fear, the guilt, the exhaustion of carrying a truth no one let him speak, made the denial lodge in my throat. "Yes," I answered. "I did." He exhaled shakily, leaning his back against the wall. "She never stopped talking about her," he whispered. "Even when we begged her to. Even when Father screamed at her. Even after they locked that wing." "You knew?" I asked softly. "Pieces," he admitted. "Enough to be afraid. Enough to want to forget." He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. "I thought she'd gone mad," he said. "I thought everything she said about a baby was grief, a story she told herself." "It wasn't a story," I said. "It happened." His shoulders shook. "I know." Samuel looked up at me, tears streaking his face. "We were children," he whispered. "We did what Father told us. We didn't question it. We didn't ask where she went. We were terrified of the silence. Silence, the weapon that had shaped this entire family." I sat beside him, the envelope still pressed between my fingers. "What really happened that night?" I asked. His answer came like broken glass. "Father didn't take her away alone." My blood ran cold. "Someone helped him." "Who?" I asked. Samuel closed his eyes. "Charles, the eldest brother, the one who denied everything, the one who called his mother delusional, the one who glared at me for simply reading her words." I felt the truth tightening around us like a rope. "He told us," Samuel continued quietly, "that the baby was born from sin, that mother should forget, that we should forget too." His voice cracked. "We believed him because believing him was safer than believing her." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the corridor. I rose slowly. "This letter changes everything," I said. Samuel nodded weakly. "Tell them," he whispered. "Tell all of them. Let the truth finally fall where it needs to." When I returned to the main study, the others were already gathered. Charles pacing like a caged wolf, Marion shaking with fear, Richard staring blankly at the fireplace. Charles turned the moment he heard my footsteps. "Where were you?" he snapped. "In the West Wing," I said. He stiffened. And, he demanded, I found what Eleanor left behind. His face dropped its confident scowl. For the first time since I met him, Charles looked afraid. Marian rose from her seat. What did she say? I opened the envelope. She wrote about 1973, about her daughter. Marian's knees buckled, and she grabbed the chair for support. Daughter, she breathed. Oh, God. Richard didn't move. His fingers dug into the armrest, whitening the knuckles. Charles stepped forward. There was no daughter, he said firmly. Too firmly. She imagined it. I met his eyes. She didn't imagine it. He flinched, just slightly, but enough. Enough to confirm that he knew exactly what I was about to reveal. I unfolded the letter and read aloud. My daughter was taken from me, stolen from my arms, erased from the world. Marian let out a sob so raw it sliced through the room. Charles lunged forward. Stop reading. I held up a hand sharply. No, you will hear every word. His jaw clenched. His breath came in furious waves, but he didn't stop me. I continued. My husband did not act alone. He had help. Marian turned to Charles with horror widening her eyes. Charles. His expression twisted. This is insanity, he barked. She was unstable. She was desperate, I said, and she left evidence. I saw it. The panic slipping through his mask, the truth unraveling in his eyes despite his denials. You were there that night, I said quietly. Silence. Marian gasped. Samuel stared at him with a wounded, trembling stare. Charles didn't answer. The silence answered for him. I finished the final devastating lines. The keys will open the room that holds your sin. Only the one who does not fear the truth shall inherit what I leave behind. When I lowered the letter, the room felt hollow. Richard finally spoke, his voice brittle. If this gets out, the Harwood legacy was already destroyed decades ago, I said sharply. Eleanor only revealed what you all helped bury. Charles slammed his fist onto the table, face crimson. She should have died with her lies, Marian cried out. They weren't lies, Charles. Samuel whispered. You helped him. I knew it. I always knew. The air vibrated with 30 years of silence breaking open like a shattering dam. Charles stumbled back, running a trembling hand over his face. She wasn't supposed to write anything, he muttered. We kept everything locked. We watched her. He froze, realizing his mistake. Marian covered her mouth in horror. Samuel collapsed into a chair. And for the first time in all my years as a lawyer, I felt pity for the person who had created this nightmare. Not Eleanor, but the child who never had a chance to grow up in this house. I cleared my throat. Eleanor's instructions were explicit, I said. One of you will inherit only if you confront the truth, not hide from it. Marian whispered through tears. I will. Charles glared at her. You will destroy us. We destroyed ourselves, she whispered back. I watched them, feeling the weight of Eleanor's words settle into the room like a final breath. And then, as if the storm had been waiting for this moment, the rain stopped. The silence left behind was different now. Not oppressive, not frightening, just honest. I gathered the documents, including the letter, and stood. I will file the necessary reports, I said softly. But know this. Eleanor didn't want revenge. She wanted acknowledgement. She wanted her daughter to be remembered. Marian nodded, tears streaming freely. Samuel stared at the floor. Richard leaned back, defeated. Charles said nothing. As I left the estate that night, the sky finally cleared. For the first time, moonlight touched the west wing windows. Pale, quiet, almost forgiving. In my years as an estate lawyer, I have learned one lesson. The dead are silent, but their truths never are. And Eleanor Harwood, after decades of suffocating silence, had finally spoken. This was her echo. Another chapter in Echoes of the Will.
Thank you for watching this story until the end. If you found it meaningful, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful, real stories from around the world.